You know how history makes it sound like the Aztecs were this giant united empire until Cortez showed up? Not true! The truth is, it was messy long before any Spaniard set foot on the continent. The Aztecs were an alliance, Tenochtitlan, Texcoco, and Tlacopan, and even they couldn't stand each other half the time. Tenochtitlan called the shots, Texcoco quietly rolled its eyes, and Tlacopan just tried to keep the peace. Around them, chaos. To the east were the Tlaxcalans, hardcore warriors who never surrendered. In the south were the Mixtecs and Zapotecs, each with their own cities, their own gods, their own grudges. To the west, the Tarascans of Michoacan, so skilled with metal that even the Aztecs kept their distance. And in between were smaller kingdoms, Matlatzincas, Otomi, Chalca, sometimes allies, sometimes rivals, always calculating their next move. This wasn't peace. It was a chessboard ready to explode. And right in the middle stood one prince, Cacamatzin of Texcoco. Poet, warrior, the man who said, "I'm not kneeling to anyone, not Cortez, not even Montezuma. I am Basil Manda, and today we're digging into the story of the voice that warned the empire before it fell silent. Thank you for joining me, and welcome to the Vanished series." Listen closely. This is not the sound of rain. It's the shattering echo of an empire on the brink of collapse. You've been told the story of Hernán Cortés and Montezuma II, conqueror and fallen emperor. But the truth is darker, buried beneath centuries of silence. What if the real story belongs to a rebel prince? He told them the empire was crumbling under its own power games, that they didn't need invaders to destroy them. They were doing it themselves. Cacamatzin was the courageous nephew of Montezuma. He challenged Tenochtitlan's leadership of the Aztec Empire. He questioned Montezuma's decisions and resisted his orders. For that, his name, his words, gone from the official record. But history never really forgets. Sometimes it just waits for someone to start listening again. Was the empire doomed from the moment he spoke? Stay with us. The truth they tried to hide is about to be revealed. The story you were told, that the Aztec king bowed to a European god, never happened. The story was a later invention, created by those who sought to portray the empire's collapse as inevitable, rather than a deliberate outcome. Myths often replace truth in the pages of history. Who really decides what we remember? But history also forgets the voices that challenge the accepted story. Within Triple Alliance, Texcoco played a unique role as both an intellectual hub and a political rival uneasy under Montezuma's shadow. Here, a different story brewed, a story of defiance, political struggle, and the voices who refused to surrender to fear. At its center, a poet, a strategist, a leader. A voice lost to most history books, but crucial to understanding the true fall of the Aztec Empire. His poetry had secret warnings and revelations. Clearly, his warnings were heard, but ignored at their peril. Before the Aztec Empire finally cracked under prophecy and steel, one man refused to kneel. Cacamatzin, the rebel prince of Texcoco, a name history tried to forget, but couldn't. Born around 1483 as the son of King Nezahualpilli, ruler of Texcoco, and Chalchiunenetzin, sister to Emperor Montezuma II, Cacamatzin was more than royalty. He was a symbol of a city steeped in poetry, philosophy, and fierce independence. From early youth, Cacamatzin was immersed in his people's politics and culture. He wrote what became legend, the Cacamatzin Icuic, poems of warning and rage. They predicted everything: invasion, betrayal, and the empire's collapse. His verses weren't just art. They were prophecy. The Icuic was a coded call to arms, polished in metaphor, lethal as obsidian blade. a poet's rebellion disguised as beauty. Cacamatzin was more than a poet. He had a warrior's spirit and a strategist's patience, dangerous traits in a world ruled by fear. While nobles bowed to Montezuma's growing empire, he quietly questioned the emperor's cautious hesitation. Their relationship was complex. Montezuma was uncle, mentor, and rival all at once, teaching Cacamatzin diplomacy, while tightening the leash on Texcoco's freedom, a master shaping a student he could never truly control. In 1515, Cacamatzin rose to rule Texcoco, with Montezuma's blessing and suspicion in equal measure, leader of a city, proud yet uneasy beneath an expanding empire's shadow. His election was no mere formality, but a statement of power, a calculated move to bind Texcoco more tightly to Montezuma's will. Yet Cacamatzin's reign would be marked by fierce opposition, court factions, noble dissenters, including his half-brother Ixtlilxochitl, and the looming threat of foreign invasion cast long shadows over his rule. Eventually, loyalties were fractured within Texcoco. Some advocated for a different path, sometimes even working with the Spanish invaders. This internal division wasn't simply family drama, it was a critical political struggle about survival, power, and allegiance during chaos. Cacamatzin's defiance was directed not only at Montezuma, but at these competing factions within his own city. Texcocoans found themselves fighting on both sides during the conquest, highlighting a complex, divided city caught between resistance and reluctant collaboration. Still, he refused to bend, a poet with iron in his veins, loyal to Texcoco above gods or kings. Every choice he made defied the tides closing in. He was the voice that roared inside an empire built on silence, the prince who challenged destiny and paid the price. What would you give to fight fate when everyone else has already surrendered? Remember that Cacamatzin's rise wasn't just political. It was a clarion call, a declaration that Texcoco would not be silenced or remain in the shadow of Tenochtitlan. As a city of poetry and fierce independence, Texcoco stood as a cultural anchor amid turmoil. Where Emperor Montezuma demanded loyalty, Cacamatzin saw chains tightening around his people. His poetry became the coarse mantra of defiance and warning, echoing with the wisdom of ancestors who rejected tyranny. Each poem was a dare written in ink. We are not vassals, we are the soul of this land. His voice spread like wildfire, an uncontrollable blaze the empire could neither contain nor extinguish. Dangerous to power, fuel for the people. His reputation surged, making him a source of inspiration to allies, and a target to those who feared rebellion. The moment he challenged Montezuma directly, he sealed his fate. Could one voice and one act of rebellion change the fate of an empire? Cacamatzin was the heart of resistance. When Hernán Cortés's ships finally appeared on the horizon in 1519, Cacamatzin's opposition in Texcoco intensified. While Montezuma waited for signs from the gods, Cacamatzin became the sign, a voice rising from Texcoco's walls, calling his people to stand, to resist, to defend their independence fiercely. He didn't pray for omens. He planned for war. In secret halls, nobles and warriors whispered around his table, plotting to strike before the storm. He has drawn a line in the sand. Texcoco would not bow. As such, Cacamatzin became the word for rebellion itself, and like all who dare power, he would soon pay. Captured and imprisoned in his own city, Cacamatzin became the living symbol of Texcoco's stubborn will. His poetry, once a fiery cobian, became lament. His steadfast refusal to betray his people sealed his tragic fate. During the infamous La Noche Triste, the Night of Sadness, as Cortés's army stumbled through darkness and rain, Cacamatzin's voice still echoed, a ghostly thunder rising above the storm. What is the real price paid by those who speak truth to power, only to have their voices erased or ignored by history? Not only was his the voice that vanished, they feared him so much they tried to extinguish his very existence in the records. The conquerors rewrote the story into something easier to believe. a lie that made their victory look inevitable. Yet in the fractured glyphs of Texcoco, Cacamatzin's warning still burns, fighting to be heard through centuries of silence. If truth must die, let it die screaming. This was never just a story of gods and kings. It's about those who spoke when silence was safe. It is about what happens when fear wins, and when the right voice speaks at the wrong time. Could or does silencing a voice be what makes it immortal? History does not erase itself. We do. What do you think was Cacamatzin's greatest act of defiance? Leave your thoughts in the comments below and join the vanished community. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell for more cinematic history deep dives.